I'm John, and tonight I want answers about the movie Jobs. There's no stopping us now because we're live. Welcome to the show. We've got a very special show tonight. We're going to talk about the movie Jobs with people who were in the movie Jobs. Not the actors, but the people that actors were portraying. First up, we have Steve Wozniak. He was the co-founder of Apple Computer. He's the author of I Was, Full of Truths. And he's also author of The Official Computer Freaks Joke Book. This book is terrible.
At least you're honest.
Also on the show, we have Daniel Kotke.
Yes.
He's one of the very first Apple employees. He was a college roommate of Steve Jobs, so he knows all the juicy stuff. And we have Andy Hertzfeld on the show. He's the author of Revolution in the Valley, and he was the original Mac software chief architect.
Wizard.
Almost. Yeah, so I was software wizard was my title.
We're going to go through the movie scene by scene. So sit back and get ready. We're going to see. And I'm your host, John A. Vink. I was an Apple engineer from 1996 to 2012. And in the room we have many, many Apple luminaries. And I might call out to them as needed. Okay, movie starts out at the iPod intro at Town Hall. In the movie, they combined two events. So really what happened was they had a press event where they showed off the iPod, and then a few days later they had an employee meeting where Steve talked to the employees and said, hey, look, we made an iPod. In the movie, they had it like Steve was showing the employees first before anyone else. And that would never happen at Apple. So this is really a combination of two events. And I was there. And that's really where my involvement in this movie ends. This is why I brought on 3 guests, so they could talk about the rest of the movie. So the movie starts at the end, and then it jumps to the beginning. Reed College, 1974.
By the way, let me say, I drove Steve. And
You drove Steve to college?
and
Right.
his girlfriend, Chris,
Chrisanne?
Julie here, I guess,
Well,
drove
no,
them.
somebody
I
else.
drove them to the college when he started. And he showed me they said you have to go to these classes. Well, that's what happens when you go to college, Steve.
Yeah.
The first couple of years, you go to their classes. And he said he didn't like, they thought you just went and you just dropped in on any classes you felt like, that college was just an experience to be around smart people, so he didn't go to any. The first day and the second day, stayed in this little tent in the room with his girlfriend, and I was all scared. I could have never been so brave to skip classes in college.
No, I mean, you went to Boulder, right?
I went to Boulder, and I went
year?
to my second year of college, and I met Steve when I was working for a third year, another year of college, programming to earn money for a third year of college. So I had met him, and then we had our year of blue boxes at Berkeley, and
Right.
so when he went up there, I drove him up. I visited him about 6 times.
Did you ever hear how Steve ended up at Reed?
Well, he actually, believe it or not, it might have been the only college he got into or applied to, but he admired the fact that they had one chemistry professor who had won a Nobel Prize. You know, it was a very liberal college, probably appealing to a lot of very liberal-minded, young, counterculture type people too, because I went up there and I met a lot of them, his roommates and other people. And
Yeah.
So the movie starts out with Professor Jack, who I guess knows he dropped out, and he's trying to
No, Jack was the dean.
The dean?
Jack
Oh,
Dudman.
he's a dean,
Yes.
okay. He said, hey, you're a smart kid, you should do something with your life, pretty much. And then he went off and found some girl named Julie, who was reading a calligraphy book.
Yeah, that was all just made up.
Yeah,
he
I'll probably
kind of already, like I said, he already knew her. They'd already had sex and more.
No, that's not Chris Ann. The
No,
Chris
no,
Ann is a
definitely
different
not Chris
character.
Ann.
Oh, okay.
No.
So that was just that's why
it sure fit.
made up.
It sure fit perfectly.
Does that mean
No.
to indicate that he was sleeping around in college?
Well, no, really, the truth is Steve badly wanted a girlfriend in college, didn't we all? And he didn't really find his girlfriend in college.
Where did he meet Chris Ann?
High school.
High school,
She was
yeah.
his high school sweetheart.
So, but did she come to college to be around him as well?
I met her at Reed. She came to visit.
Drove up
Came
just
to
for that first week, and then I drove
Yeah.
her back home.
All right. Yeah, Julie was the LSD supplier. And then after that, you guys are in a meadow. You and Steve and Chris Ann are in a meadow.
So was
and
Chris
you're
Ann,
listening to classical music that's coming from the stars or something.
Well, it's all just made up, but I would say that scene came off pretty well, I thought.
Yeah.
That scene I actually
Made
felt
up
was
scene.
kind of close to the truth for the way people
Yes.
see it.
So
Yeah.
did you ever take LSD with Steve?
Oh, yeah, bunch of times. Bunch of times.
And Chris Ann, the three of you?
No, never with Chris Ann.
Oh, okay. So then he went off and took calligraphy classes.
I was in the same class.
And you're in
yes.
that class too?
Yes.
And so this so-called Julie was in that class too, apparently.
There was no Julie.
There was Julie, right? So then Steve took electronics classes, but were bored and walked out during them.
Well, there was no electronics.
Electronics. I don't think
There
they
was
had electronics.
no
at
electronics
Reed.
at
That explains everything.
He'd taken electronics at our high school.
Yes.
But I don't think he got good grades in anything. But
Right.
he understood electronics, enough to look at a schematic and solder things together. Yeah, not like a designer.
Okay, and what was the name of your electronics teacher at Homestead?
But, Mr. McCollum.
McCollum,
John
right.
C. McCollum. Yeah.
Right. Super
Great
guy.
teacher, great class. Better than any of the local college electronics courses, actually.
Yeah.
But certainly when we were there, our class was kind of back in vacuum tubes. barely touching transistors,
Wow,
and
you're dating
it didn't
yourself
touch
now.
computers. So it
Yeah.
didn't touch computers. So this idea he was watching a TV show and computers are going to be the future. Well, that was the sort of TV show you saw at home on normal TV,
So the movie jumps to him working at Atari.
By the way, he came back from Reed College and saw that I had built my own Pong game. Haven't seen one in a bowling alley. On a small little board with just 28 little $1 chips. And so that gave him the idea to go down to Atari, which was in Los Gatos, California. And he went down and he showed them the board and he wound up with a job.
Wow.
Nolan Bushnell likes to say, well, I was hiring two Steves, but because he wasn't a designer, he wasn't an engineer, he never wrote any software, but he knew electronics a bit, He was telling the other engineers their soldering wasn't good.
So Steve alienates all his colleagues, and he calls them idiots, and he smells terribly because he thinks eating fruit means he doesn't need to bathe, etc.
Oh, that's not true. None of that's true.
That's not true?
Really. None of
The
that's
fruitarian
Oh,
diet?
no, it's
You
ask
think so?
Nolan Bushnell. Yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I don't know. When I asked Al Alcorn, my statement is, in all the time I spent with Steve, sleeping, next to him and camping out, and I never ever once had the thought that he needed to take a shower.
Nor did I.
Never
Nor did I.
once. Never
But
once.
engineers might have complained about it because he was criticized them in his other ways.
Yeah, I got a story about that. It's later in the chronology, but Scotty took Steve for a walk around the parking lot to tell him to shower because people were complaining. And the reason I know that is Steve took Burl for that same walk around the parking lot because Burl also didn't shower. And so Steve told him, he goes, well, this is what Scotty told me.
Now, I'm probably like you.
That's
We
funny.
wouldn't care. You and I wouldn't
yeah, I just
care,
wouldn't
so we
care.
wouldn't notice.
Steve is frustrated at Atari, and he wants his own project. He gets offered $5,000 for fixing a game. Now, I don't know if it's Breakout or Pong, but he takes the offer, and he tries to work on it, and he can't figure it out. And so then he calls you, Steve.
It's not fixing a game, it's
It was a new,
designing
yeah, it
a
was a
game.
new
designing it. Okay.
But he
Designing it.
didn't have the design abilities. That was the problem.
Right.
Maybe he thought he could figure it out because he knew how to look at schematics and modify. There's a step between